Okay, we'll get started at the unorthodox 204 rather than 205. Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining. I guess I thought I would start by taking too long because I'm sure you all read it, but just kind of going over the plan for today and kind of what the next few weeks will look. Then open it up for any questions. We'll go over today's first DBQ skill, and I have some to do that. I'm going to try and share my screen. So once again, let me know in the chat if you guys can't see anything in about 1 minute. Okay, we good. Okay, I think we're good. So I'm just going to go ahead. So just to be clear, obviously we have two things to do between now and our new test date of Thursday, May 21st, which on the one hand is a long time from now, right? We have a whole month. On the other hand, it's not that long. It's only 5. And so that means we kind of have to practice two things. We have to review through 6. The tests will only be over units 1 through 6, which means nothing past the year 1900. And on the other hand, we need to, of course, review our DBQ skills. We kind of have to get used to the new DBQ rubric, what those skills are again, and find some opportunities to practice them. So on that note, the main thing we're going to do to get ready for the content is I want you guys to watch these Heimler history videos on YouTube. I know a lot of you do anyway to study, and there's some corresponding note sheets. Today, we're just going to do unit 1, and then over the next couple weeks, we'll either do 1 or 2 units through those video notes. Hopefully you guys can just print them out, write them down, collect them, and turn them in like the week before the test, whatever, Monday, May 11. I know that the sheets aren't super long and there's not a lot of room to write, and that's a good thing because that's kind of the point, is I don't want you guys to write down too much. Like this test is because you're taking it at home, it's kind of an open note test. So we were hoping that doing it this way, you don't have a gigantic 300-page book in front of you, and you don't have 50 handwritten pages of notes. You kind of just have these pages of notes that you can quickly reference, depending on what prompt we end up getting. So do not feel the pressure to take all kinds of additional notes. Like just those note sheets should be fine. Now, if you guys are motivated, if you feel like you have more time to work on AP World History throughout the week, College Board itself has started a week or two ago making a variety of unit review videos also. All the unit 1 ones are ready. I think all the unit 2 ones are ready, and every week they're going to add another unit. I put the link up here on the instructions for you guys too. That's what this is. And again, I'm not going to make it mandatory because that would be too much of our time. But if you are motivated and want to, these are videos made by the College Board as a way to review for this test. They go over both content and skills. So you might just want to check one out, maybe today or sometime this week. See if you like it. And if you do, then just try and pace it out and maybe just do 1 unit per week. And that'll be an excellent way to supplement what you're doing. And here is the link. And I guess that's it. So as far as content review goes, I'm not going to make us read the entire AMSCO book or reread the textbook or anything crazy like that. So we're just going to make use of these YouTube videos. If you really don't like learning by watching YouTube, then you can use the AMSCO book instead. It's all the same stuff. But we thought this would just be a way to kind of narrow it down. And that's how we'll get our content review units 1 through 6. Okay, next, how are we going to learn about the new DBQ? As you guys know by now, the test is on Thursday, May 21st. It is going to be a 5-document DBQ. It is going to only be 45 minutes. And they have expanded the rubric up to 10 rubric points. So your new score will be somewhere between a 0 and a 10. So our learning lesson for today will be to read the new rubric, read this guide on how to write a DBQ. I think it's excellent. Another option, not mandatory, but optional, you can watch Heimler's video on the new 2020 DBQ. And just to make sure that you guys did read this closely and know where your 10 points are going to come from, we will schedule a short, like 20-minute quiz next week to be determined. It'll take place probably on Google Classroom, in which you'll just basically list where you get your 10 points from. You know, let me just briefly go ahead and tell you what to expect. I need to share a different screen now. Okay, can you guys, can one of you speak up and tell me if you see this screen now? Can you see the rubric screen?
It looks like the same screen.
Okay. How can I change what I'm sharing? Sorry, I gotta learn this on the fly. New share. All right. Here we go.
Yeah, I think the rubric's on there now.
You see the rubric? Okay, good. All right. So again, I'll be brief because you guys are going to kind of read that. But same thing. In these 45 minutes, you're going to write an opening paragraph with a context statement and a thesis. So that's 2 points, just like usual. Then you're going to use the documents for evidence. It used to be that if you use 3 documents, you get 1 point. And if you use 6 documents, you get 2 points. Now, it's if you use 2 documents, you get a point. If you use 2 documents or more and they actually relate to your thesis, you get 2 points. And if you use 4 or 5 documents and they actually relate to your thesis, you get 3 points. So this has gone up from 2 points to being worth 3 points. And the new high bar is using 4 of the documents. And then it used to be you get 1 point for outside evidence. That's the same. Now you can get another point for a second piece of outside evidence. So to recap, it used to be 2 points for using the documents to support your thesis and 1 point for additional evidence for a total of 3 points. Now it's 3 points for using the 4 documents and 2 points for outside evidence for a total of 5 points. So now we're up to 7 total points. And then to go down to the analysis and reasoning, it used to be that you needed to source 3 documents for 1 point. Now, if you source 1 document, you get a point. That's point number 8. And if you source a second document, that's another point. So that's 2 more points, so now we're up to 9. We will practice this skill more throughout this month, I promise you. But to put it as simply as possible, I'm going to try and make it more clear and more simple than I have been. And basically, I just want you guys to see, sourcing a document means just explain why the author's audience or the author's background, like their occupation or religion, something like that, or the author's kind of time and place in which they were writing. How did one of those things affect the document? That's what it is. So more on that later. And then finally, kind of that nebulous, awesome point at the end. If your paper throughout all that was sophisticated, if it was complex, if you were able to tackle the essay from multiple perspectives, if you were able to throw in a lot of evidence and just good, insightful connections, it's just kind of that 1 point for just those cream of the crop essays. It's really not one thing you can throw into your essay. Okay, so to recap, 1 point for thesis, 1 point for context, 3 points for using 4 of the documents or 5. 2 points for outside evidence if you can come up with 2 pieces. 2 points for sourcing, 1 per document you source, and then 1 point for that overall awesome point. The College Board will not give us a scale as to what you need to make on this equals between a 0 and 5 on the DBQ. They're going to just kind of come up with a curve once they start grading them. So I can't tell you like, oh, an 8 on this is a 5, or they haven't announced that yet, and they won't until like July. Okay, let's go back to where I was. Okay, so that's your introduction to the rubric, and I'm confident that reading the rubric or reading that 5-able guide or the Heimler video will help you get ready for, hey, what are those 10 points? You're not going to need to memorize the rubric, guys, just a brief explanation of where the 10 points come from. And then finally, just once per week, we're going to practice a DBQ skill in some way. I can't take credit for it, but there was another teacher I found out there through this Facebook group that put together this awesome program to kind of practice one skill per worksheet. And the first worksheet is what I posted for you guys today, and it's on context. So hopefully you guys already did that, and we'll just do one of these for each of the next 5 Fridays. So here's how I wanted to end today, was by going over the first worksheet. But before I do, if anybody wants to speak up and ask a question or chat a question about kind of what the next month will look like, whether it's about those Heimler review videos, whether it's about the new format of the AP test, whether it's about the rubric or these DBQ worksheets. Again, trying to still keep to the roughly 2 hours per week. That's kind of how we pace this out. So any questions before we move on to going over today's specific worksheet? Okay, here's a question. What time is the AP World Test? It is on Thursday, May 21st at 2 p.m. You will be asked to log in around 1:30 just to make sure you are all set up and ready to go. Okay, outside evidence. It's worth 2 points. You need to write 2 paragraphs. Outside evidence is awarded. All the rubric says is that outside evidence is more than a word or phrase. So what that means is you can't say that scholar was Confucian and get the point. What that means is you can't say that France was interested in raw materials from Africa and get a point. It needs to be more than just a sentence. So you need to be more specific than that and plan to write 2 or 3 sentences for an outside evidence point. So for the France example, you would say like France was interested in Africa for raw materials such as coal or rubber or palm oil that they could then send to their factories back home for industrial production. You know, it just has to be more involved than just one word or phrase. Okay, it's more than name dropping. So it does not mean that you have to write 2 full extra paragraphs, but be prepared to write something more than a phrase of your own knowledge. Okay, good questions. Anything else? Going once, going twice. Okay, of course, if any questions come up, you guys just email me. Hopefully this plan will work out. So here's how I wanted to end today. I gave you guys this worksheet to get us going with context, which should be the opening 3 or 4 sentences roughly of your paper. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay, hopefully you guys found this helpful as a good recap of what it is. Hopefully it rings true to how I've been trying to teach it throughout the year. This sheet does give you a breakdown of what the new rubric is. If you want one nice snapshot of what the 10 points are, there you go. Reminds you that contextualization should be the opening few sentences of your paper. Throughout the year, whenever we've done a practice one of these in class, or I have graded a couple of yours, a lot of people try to do context in 1 or 2 sentences. We just have to try to get in the habit of making it 3 or 4 sentences. You are fully explaining it. Also, remember, guys, context is you are tying what you are about to write about to some larger development or process. Remember, so much of this class has not been about memorizing certain dates or people or wars. You know, it's instead, we've gone over the great isms or isations of history: industrialization, imperialism, trade routes, or the spread of a belief system, or the rise of Enlightenment ideals, you know, stuff like that. That's kind of what this is testing, is can you tie the prompt to some broader process that was happening? You know, the most recent one you guys wrote was about railroads and empires. Where did that come from? Like, what process did that connect to? So talking about the rise of the Industrial Revolution in Europe would have been the context to go with there. Or talking about the rise of European imperialism would have been something you could go with there. Or why are imperial powers going around building railroads? Like, set up a paper on railroads with why do they want to build railroads in the first place? Like, railroads are going to help with the main trade pattern at the time of we're trying to get resources out of colonies and get our finished goods into colonies. Like that main trading pattern we try to talk a lot about during the year. So that's kind of what's going on here. Can you pick out a main process that sets up the topic of the paper and explain it for a few sentences. I love this worksheet for this bottom part right here. I was very excited for you guys to see this. Just in case none of this has gotten through during the year, I feel like these are 3 excellent ways to conceptualize what contextualization is. It is just the opening to what you are about to write about. Give me the background information. Give me how we got here. You might just want to put it to yourself as simple as possible. How did we get here? So all the worksheets will kind of be like this. It's going to just be a little explanation of what that point is and what it sounds like, and then ask you guys just to write a few practice ones. So they'll all be about this length. So the very last thing I want to show you guys before we open it back up to any questions or comments is for these 5 prompts, I'm going to show you an exemplar of what a good one would sound like that definitely would score the point. And remember, yours does not have to sound this perfect. It doesn't need to be this polished or sophisticated. This is a rough draft whenever you write, but it does need to just sort of explain the process. Even if you're not using the world's most perfect polished words, does it accurately explain the process over the course of 3 or 4 sentences? So I'm going to share one last screen here. Okay, the first one said, imagine you had a prompt about women and children during the Industrial Revolution. Okay, so how did we get here? How do we tie this? What larger process or development led to this? So you might want to back up and say, industrialization was a product of the 17th century when things like the steam engine led to an age of industrialization. Prior to this, life was very agricultural. Women and children and all lived in the same home. Work was done in the home. Things were very patriarchal. Women supported the family in a domestic role. There you go. You just set up a topic on how women and children's lives are about to change. You've tied it to the larger process of kind of what the lives of women used to look like before all these changes are going to happen. So just something about how life used to be agricultural, and now it's going to change with the paper I'm about to write. Okay, I thought the next one was the hardest one to write because it's kind of hard to think of what came before nationalism. So if you struggled with number 2, I wouldn't feel bad. I didn't immediately have the best answer either. But we're looking at how can we tie the rise of nationalism, this huge ism we talked about for the last couple of units. How would you set up a paper on nationalism? Well, you talk about, same thing. The world is going through a big change at this time. It's going from agricultural towards industrial. Also, this would be a perfect time to bring in the process of, there were revolutions. The map of the world is being remade. The British colonies broke away. France underwent the revolution. Haiti becomes independent. Latin America becomes independent. Germany and Italy unify. This was when nationalism was reshaping the map of the world. That was one really good way to approach it. Or you could have maybe mentioned how governments promoted nationalism on purpose to unify their societies and make them stronger. That could have been another thing that you wrote about. I thought number 3 was the easiest one to do. So I hope that you read number 3. Evaluate the extent to which Christianity changed societies in Latin America, 1500 to 1800. I really want you guys to see a prompt like this and think, here's how you do it. It's as easy as, if I'm about to write a paper on Christianity, 1500 to 1800, context is, how does Christianity get there in the first place? How did we get here? So this is where you write about how Christianity was spread by Portuguese and Spanish colonization. That's it, right? So you have Spain and Portugal, you have their advances in maritime technology and their advances in understanding wind and ocean currents, and their desire to get around the Ottoman Empire, and their desire to find a more cost-effective and cheap routes to Asia, or direct routes to Asia. Their competition with each other, anything like that, and how they ended up discovering these new lands and colonizing them, and then missionary activity went with that. It was just a part of their national program, and it was a part of what justified it. Just anything with Christianity spread with European colonization in the Americas. Like, that's how Christianity gets there. Now I'm ready to write a paper on how Christianity affects this part of the world, 1500 to 1800. I think that number 4 was kind of along the same lines. If you're about to write a paper on how the West impacts China, 1850 to 1920, how does the West get to China in the first place before 1850? Why is China dealing with this problem? Again, that is what contextualization is. So you write here, oh, China had been declining in strength. Mention the Opium Wars, mention the Taiping Rebellion, mention the declining effectiveness of the Qing dynasty, mention how Europe had been rising, mention Britain's industrial revolution and their advances with weaponry, and how they were just trying to break more into the Chinese market and open up more treaty ports. Just anything in that realm of Great Britain is rising in power, China is declining in power, Great Britain is getting more aggressive because they want Chinese goods and they want to break into the Chinese market. And I would hope that you could be a little specific with a mention of the Opium Wars, or Great Britain developing steamships, or just something like that as a part of that process. And finally, the last one I also thought was very manageable. If you had a DBQ on how did Africa respond to European imperialism? Well, okay, how did we get here? So this is where you would talk about, why are Europeans in Africa in the first place? So this is where you talk about the process of imperialism. Could you talk about the white man's burden or social Darwinism? Could you talk about the dominant global trade pattern of, we need sources of cheap raw materials for our factories and food for our people, and then markets for our finished goods? Could you talk about how Europeans were much more developed and had better technology and better weapons, and so they could dominate Africa? Any of those things. So in summary, what I wanted you guys to take from this is, let's not forget, contexts are going to be the first 3 to 4 sentences of your paper. I want you to identify some event or development or process that you think sets up, and really force yourself to try and write 3 or 4 sentences. And when you're done, it should transition into your thesis, right? It should feel like you just set up your thesis statement. It should feel like you answered the question, how did we get here? So there you go. Hopefully when you do this, you can think about one of those big processes of history that we've talked about in class or that you'll review over the next month. The great isms of history, the industrialisms, the imperialism, the trade routes, something like that. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, guys, every week, hopefully we can do that. We're going to have a standing date at 2 o'clock in which we'll go over that day's worksheet to answer any questions you guys might be having. Every week should look like this, doing 1 or 2 Heimler videos, doing a worksheet, maybe one more thing like next week's quiz. Just we're getting enough in. And that's the plan for now. So let me open up the floor to any, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Floor to any last questions. Yeah. Voice. Silence is a good thing. Should I post those exemplars, or well, I won't do it today, just so people don't just copy that for their work, but I'll post those later in the week. This recorded video and the exemplars later. Okay, now, guys. Okay, I guess that means that's a good thing. You guys have the handle. So on that note, I'm ready to just sign off. I hope you guys have a good weekend. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you for starting here over the next month. I hope you like the pacing of thing, and just be in touch if you need anything. Have a good weekend. And I'm going to stay in here. You guys log out first.